In the 14th century, in the late 14th century, an artist was given an opportunity, a very rare opportunity. They were asked to take a piece of marble and make something of the marble. The first artist took the piece of marble, sat down and studied the piece of marble for a few hours, for a few days, for a few months, and couldn't find something of value. This piece of marble, in his opinion, was too thin. It was too, perhaps unusable. He decided that there was nothing good that could come about from this piece of marble. So he handed it back to the authorities who had given it to him. He was a very respected artist. A number of years after that, the same piece of marble, the same piece of stone was given to a different artist. The same artist held the same piece of stone for a number of years and came up with a recommendation that nothing good could come out of that piece of marble. A number of years later on, Michelangelo was born. Michelangelo started studying arts, and after a number of years, in his early 20s, the same piece of marble was presented to Michelangelo. Michelangelo took the piece of marble and he started to use his imagination. And his imagination allowed him to see something in that piece of marble that all the other artists couldn't see. He created a piece of sculpture that we celebrate today. It's called David. If you've ever been to Florence, then you've perhaps seen the statue of David. It's a statue that people from all over the world come to just to celebrate the genius and the brilliance in someone's piece of art. Now, what is interesting about that short tale or short story is this. When Michelangelo started working on that piece of stone, there's a story that says a young boy came up to him and said, "What are you doing?" Michelangelo was very, very, very finely chipping away on the piece of stone. And so he responded to the young boy and said, "There's an angel within this piece of stone, and I'm trying to let this angel free." So my question to you today on this beautiful day, Monday, is what angel sleeps within you? What greatness resides dormant within you? Have you found your David? There's almost a cliche concept that we have that the grass is greener on the other side. We look at other people's lives, we look around our society, we look around amongst our friends, and we feel within us that perhaps I'm not good enough. Perhaps I should be doing more. Now, the feeling of wanting to achieve more is a noble feeling. It's something that I recommend. But looking at someone else's success, subjective as that might be, and using that to judge yourself and your progress, I think is a recipe for disaster. I often say that the grass is not greener on the other side, it's just grass. You make the grass green. So my question and my theme for today is to ask you, have you found your acres of diamonds? We're all trying to find it without. I want to submit to you that I think it's all within. If you want to find that greatness within you, if you want to find success, if you want happiness, if you want good fortune, if you want prosperity, whatever your heart's desires might be, you cannot find it outside you. You have to find it within you. The great teacher said, the kingdom that you seek is within you. You have to first seek for the kingdom within, and everything else you want is made available to you in reality. I'm reminded by a story back in the 18th century. A young farmer had a passion, a burning desire for gold. He wanted to discover gold. He studied gold, and then he learned that gold had been discovered in a southern part of California. So he decided he was going to sell his farm. he sold his farm for a few $100s to someone by the name of Sodders. Now, the person who bought his farm took over the farm and brought in a contractor to construct a mill, because there was a body of water running through the farm. And they said, well, we can actually create a mill here. Now, they had created the mill, and as water flowed, on one evening, Colonel Sutter's daughter was out playing in the sand with the water. And as she played with the sand, she dipped her hand in and pulled it out, and she had this sand in her hands. But then she walked into the house, and her father was sitting there with a friend. And they noticed something very strange. They noticed that the daughter's hand, the young girl's hands, were glowing like pure gold. They inquired as to what was on her hand, and she said, I've been playing with the sand. Now, it turned out that on the same piece of land that was sold for a few $100s, they discovered the largest gold reserve on the North American continent. That gold reserve is created in today's currency billions of dollars, but it was sold for a few $100s. Why? Because the person who had the mill, who had the farm rather, could not recognize and could not see what they had. They left all they had looking for everything else on the outside. And so one of the questions that we all have to ask ourselves regularly is, what am I not seeing in every area of your life? Your relationship, in business, health, happiness. It could also be just your lifestyle. It's important you ask yourself the simple question, what am I not seeing? I think that question might sound very simplistic, but that question in itself has the ability to change the course of your life, because there is always something you cannot see. And if you can just stop and ask yourself that question and then look around, what you find is, in many cases, is not a lack of resources, it's a lack of resourcefulness. We all have all we need to achieve whatever dreams that our minds can conceive. You might be in a difficult situation, but let me encourage you by saying that you have everything you need to achieve your life's goal and your dreams. You have a mind. You have a brain with 1 billion cells. You have a heart to help you regulate and manage your emotions and communicate between your mind and your brain. You have a conscience that can guide you from making the wrong choices and the wrong decisions. You have a body, unique to you alone, that can help you support those dreams and goals you have to bring it to fulfillment and fruition. But in addition to that, you have the power of choice, the power to decide, the power to course correct, even when you make things slightly wrong, or if you get things wrong. But in addition to that, we've had 7,000 years of recorded history, and in that time frame, we've had the life lessons of other people who have achieved success and those who haven't. And we can use their examples to leverage our experiences. And so it's not a lack of resources, it's really a lack of resourcefulness. You have failed to recognize that you've been given all of the assets you need to have a fulfilled life. Now, in addition to all of those assets that you have, you've also been given an assignment, a unique one, I have to say. Your uniqueness is so beautiful that there's never been one like you before, and there never will be another like you. You're unique. Meaning that you can take the gifts and the skills and the talents and the assets you have and channel it in such a way that you provide value and service to people and the world. And in return, the world and the marketplace compensates you. So I repeat what I said before, it's not a lack of resources, it's a lack of resourcefulness. What are you not seeing around you? Now, having established that principle or that theme, the question should be, okay, how do I make a change? How do I start to move in the direction of my dreams? How do I travel in the direction of my vision and my outcomes? How do I change my life? It starts by choice. You see, the world doesn't get better. Your life, your world doesn't get better by chance. It gets better by choices. And you have to start by recognizing that you're not a victim of life. You're a volunteer. There are no victims in life. We're all volunteers. In every area of your life, you and I, respectively in our individual lives, we are the lowest common denominators. And therefore, for things to change in our life, we individually have to change first. To try to change the external results in your life without changing yourself, I think, in my opinion, is the struggle against life. It just cannot work because you reproduce who you are and what you are. So, to begin the change, we've got to start with you. And that process begins by understanding yourself, understanding who you are, but also understanding what you have. Recognizing the uniqueness in you and using that knowledge and that insight to leverage and achieve what you really want. And what I'd like to do in the next few minutes is perhaps give you maybe one or two nuggets of how you can start to propel yourself towards your heart's desires. Now, I started my journey a number of years ago, like many people did, and I found that a lot of what I believed about myself just wasn't true. It was based on other people's opinions. It was based on the results I had achieved in the past. It was based on the relationships I had. It was based on my goals and dreams, which were very, very limited. They weren't big enough. But more than anything, it was based on my habits and the self-image I had about myself. I had to change that. I had to change all of that. And so, if you want to create better results in your life, one of the first things you have to do is recognize that you are infinite in your potential. I know that sounds too good to be true. But recognize this, that we've all been given two gifts. Two gifts that give us a level of, should I dare to use the word, immortality in its own unique way. The first gift is the gift of the mind. The second gift is the gift of speech. That's what I want to talk about, just two gifts. And how you can start to use those two gifts in such a way that you can start reaching out for, much better things, and you can start to see your life change. Now, to understand the mind, you've got to spend some time studying yourself. There are two parts of your mind. There's the subconscious mind and there is the conscious mind. People call it by different terms. Some people call the subconscious mind the superego, the superconsciousness. Some people call it just the mind. Some call it spirit. Now, I don't really mind what definition you choose to use. I know for a fact that there is wisdom and there is power in the subconscious mind. And in your subconscious mind, that's where your self-image exists. That is where all of your habits are lodged, and really that's where success begins. But to use your mind in the way that you need to use it to achieve the results you want, you've got to understand the difference between what we call the sensual faculties of your mind and the higher faculties of your mind. It sounds a bit technical. It's very simple. And why is this important? Now, I've found greatness, success, prosperity, good health, good fortune, happiness, love, purpose resides in understanding and applying and using your higher faculties. If you use your five senses alone, you're going to have a very average life. And it's the five senses that cause people to think that something is better out there. Now, we're taught how to use our five senses. Sight, sound, touch, smell, taste. We know how to use those. So you watching me right now, you're using your sight. That's simply a central faculty. You're able to see me right now because you're using your eyes. So when you see with your eyes, we call that sight, a function of using your eyes. And your eyes will show you things as they are. So in your present life, whatever you might be going through, whatever you might be experiencing, you can see it, you can feel it, perhaps you can hear it. And so you might look at your bank account, you might look at the state of your health, you might look at the state of your relationships, and you say, it all looks really bad. The more you use your central faculties, or your sensory faculties, I should say, the more you limit yourself. To break out of that paradigm, to break out of that limits in lifestyle and habits and conditioning, you have to use your 6 higher faculties. And I want to talk about one of them because just understanding how that one works helps you start to create the future that you want. I want to talk about the imagination. A lot of people have heard the word imagination. Imagine, imagine, imagine. It's like a cliched word now. But I want to say that if you want to create a better life, you've got to learn how to use your imagination. Now, how do you do this? It's very simple. It begins by allowing yourself to just fantasize. Imagine yourself as a child. And see yourself and see through your childlike mindset and just ask yourself a simple question. What do I really want? The fantasizing process, some people call it the dreaming process, some people call it the visualization process, begins the creation of what you want in the future. So you start using your imagination by fantasy. You allow your mind to just think about something that you want. And here is the point. Most of us worry about what we think we can do. Meet anyone down the street and ask them the simple question, what do you want? And I can guarantee perhaps 70% will tell you that they want something, and I can guarantee that what they tell you that they want is what they know they can achieve. It might be based on a previous past experience. They've done it before, they've achieved it. The remaining 25 or 27% will tell you something different. And the second response you might get will be based on what they think they can do. Perhaps something that they've studied and something they've spent some time researching. And they know within themselves that if they give it a go, they can achieve it. However, less than 3% will tell you what they really want. Less than 3% will tell you what they really desire. For so many years, I lived in that first and the second group. I'm struggling now. I'm trying to get into the first group. It's very difficult. But to get into the first group, you have to learn to just allow yourself to just dream of what you want and forget about how you're going to get it. How you're going to get it is none of your business at the creation stage. All you have to do is create the picture. The whole purpose of dreaming is to create a picture. Now, the reason why we have to get you off the first group and the second group and get you into the third group is because if you stay in the first group, you have no inspiration. Because you're dealing with something that you've done before, so you know how to do it. So you have no inspiration. If you move into the second group, you also have very little inspiration because you've thought about it and you know if you give it a go, you get it. No inspiration. No hope, no inspiration. And without inspiration, it's difficult to get yourself to do anything. So one of the reasons why we dream and we fantasize is simply because we're trying to create inspiration. We're trying to create a vision different to where we currently exist at. The great writer says, without vision and dreams, the people perish. The word perish there doesn't mean people die. No, it simply means people lose self-discipline. They lose hope. They lose focus. They lose inspiration. They have nowhere to go. And so for so many people, we're stuck because the picture we have is based on what we can see with our physical eyes, by sight. But we need to learn how to move beyond our physical eyes and move into our mind and create a picture of a better future, not based on what we think we can do, not based on what we've done before, but based on what we really want. That is how you start to change your life. Now, that fantasy you have, that idea, that picture, that dream, you must take that picture now and start to think about it. You must start to allow the second part of your higher faculty to guide you. Now, I started by talking about your 6 higher faculties. I've talked about the first one, which is what we're dealing with now, imagination. The second part of your higher faculty is something called reason. Now, reason is the part of your mind that allows you to think. Now, you can think inductively and you can think deductively. You can think negative, you can think positive, but you can't do both at the same time. You've got to choose one. Now, for so many years, I couldn't understand the concept of thinking. Why? Because going back to my academic education, no one really taught me how to think. It took me years. It wasn't until I got into my 30s that I started to understand thinking. So here is how you do it. You get an idea in your mind. That becomes a picture you place in your imagination. You then reconnect with your reasoning faculty to think. And I found in my 30s that thinking is simply a process of asking and answering questions. It's really that simple. When we think in pictures. You and I think in pictures. So for many years, I kept thinking of, okay, how do I think? And every time I tried to think, I just got bored. My mind wandered around and I found myself doing something else because I just didn't understand the process. So to begin the thinking process, you've got to start with a question. Take that idea you've created and ask yourself a simple question. Now, the question is not to prove that the idea can be feasible or can be achieved. You just want to allow yourself start to think. Get emotionally involved with that picture. So you might ask yourself, what will it feel like if I achieve this goal? You know, the Wright brothers achieved flight not because they spent their time asking, how can we do it? They achieved their dream of flying because they kept asking the question, what would it feel like if we achieve this goal? Can you imagine us flying? When everyone was saying it's impossible, they were saying, I can see us in the air flying. I can feel the breeze on my legs. It feels great. They were asking a different question. So get an idea and just start asking questions. Forget about whether it's going to be intelligent questions. I would say use your childlike ability, meaning your responsibility at the creation stage is not to prove yourself right or wrong. You're not a scientist. The imagination creates the reality. You simply have to create the picture, create the emotions, connect the emotions with the picture, place both of them in the imagination and have faith. Really that simple. You must create a picture of who you want to be and what you want. Get emotionally involved with that picture by asking yourself, what would it feel like if I achieved this goal? What can I see? What would I do? Where will I be? Who would I have around me? So live in the feeling that you've achieved the wish, you've achieved the dream. Now, by living in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, now you've emotionally connected with that idea. With the feeling and the picture, you place it in the imagination with expectation now. And this is simply you saying to yourself, good things are supposed to happen to me. You wake up every morning and you affirm that to yourself. You prepare for the dream being realized. Faith is loyalty to things that you haven't seen with your natural eyes. is loyalty to what you've seen with your mind's eye. And the highest expression of that faith you have is action. So how do you take action? You sit down and you ask yourself the simple question: if I am this person that I want to be, what would I do every day and how will I live? And you just write it down. What you find is you would have listed out various habits and new activities that you have to do every day. Now you express your faith by acting like that person you want to be, as though you've already achieved it. I know this sounds unconventional. We've been taught that you feel good when you have what you want. I'm asking you to re-engineer that thought process. You have what you want when you feel good. The feeling is the secret. Your feeling gets the blessing. So if you want to change your life, don't look outside, look within. Create the picture you want, get the emotions, connect the emotions with the picture, put in your imagination, expect it to happen, and start to act like the person you want to be. Now that is simply using your mind. That's how you do it. I talked about speech as being the second gift that we have. By speech, I'm simply referring to your internal thoughts and your spoken words. Imagine a ship on a body of water. Your thoughts and your words are like an anchor. When you release and drop an anchor down into the sea, it holds the ship. It holds the boat in the same position. It holds you down. But also your thoughts and your words can also be seen as the rudder of a ship. It pushes you and propels you in the direction that you want to travel in. So you've created a picture, you put in your imagination, you're acting like you want to become. My second recommendation is you've got to control your speech. Every day we're talking to ourselves. Every day. Everyone talks to him or herself. Some of us do it consciously, some of us do it subconsciously. But your internal thoughts are creating. Just in the same way you've gone through the process of dreaming and imagining and putting it there, your thoughts are creating. Your thoughts are creative. So you have to learn not to self-sabotage. In other words, whatever picture you've created and put in your mind, you must now develop thoughts and words that align with what you want. This is where the concept of self-talk comes in. In other words, you have to start affirming yourself. Use affirmations. Sit down and write down beautiful words and great words about yourself. Sit down and write words about who you're becoming, and let your thoughts, internal thoughts, and your spoken words be consistent and congruent with who you want to be. Otherwise, you're like a farmer who plants a seed in the ground, stands back and has doubts in his heart, goes back to where he's planted the seed, digs up the soil, looks and says, oh yes, the seed is still there. I was worried someone had stolen the seed. Puts the seed back in the ground, uncovers the soil, goes away and waits for a few more days, and he sees nothing, comes back again, digs it up, and goes through the same process over and over again. You've got to have what we call childlike faith. In other words, plant the seed, recognize that the soil is rich, but also accept that there is a season for sowing and there is a season for reaping, and that there's nothing you can do about the time in between both seasons. You've got to wait and recognize that you can sow a seed in January and the seed will take 2 days for it to harvest. You can also sow a seed and it takes 2 years. There is a season to sow, there is a season to reap. You cannot do both at the same time. So most people sow the seed in their mind, in the soil of their mind, and immediately they start to dig it up. And they dig it up by fear and worry and doubt and uncertainty. But more importantly, because once they're done using their vision and their mind's eye, they go back to using their sensory faculties of sight. So you've decided who you want to be, but you come back into reality and everything looks very difficult and very different. And so you go into the dilemma of, my sight shows me things as they are, and what I see by sight, which I believe to be real, is more correct than that which I've seen in my imagination. And here is the point I want to make. The only reality is that you have in your imagination. I know what that sounds. I know that doesn't sound right. But think about this, for example. The watch I'm wearing in my hand is not the reality. The real thing was the idea in the designer's mind. Look around you now, wherever you are now. Everything you see and what you're watching on right now is really a product of someone's idea, someone's thought. They held that thought, and by consistently working on that thought, they created a product. So the real reality is the idea. You can take away the product, and the artist, the designer, can recreate in his mind and create another product. So that which you see by sight, though it appears real, and though your circumstances and situation might not seem great, you've got to recognize that the true reality is that which you create in your mind. If you can hold on to that belief, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. It requires effort, it requires consistency, and that's the reason why you need self-talk, and that's the reason why your speech comes in. Now here is how the two come together. The mind is the soil. The picture you've created is the seed. Your speech, your internal thoughts and your spoken words is how you water the soil. So, if you want your reality in your mind to be made manifested as quickly as you can, you must water the seed and water the soil. You must protect. A farmer has to guard, protect, nurture the soil after putting the seed. You can't just put the seed and walk away. Now you have to protect. The season between the sowing and the harvest we call waiting. But we don't wait passively, we wait actively. And we do that by watering the soil. So you water the soil using your spoken thoughts and your spoken words. And here we're talking about saying inspiring things about your future, believing that that future is already yours, speaking in the present as though it's already here, living consistently in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Now you do all of this for a simple reason. If your thoughts are creative, then it simply means that your thoughts and your spoken words are moving into your future. They're not moving into your past. They're moving into your future. So you have a choice. You can simply choose that which you want to see in your future, or you can remain limited by doubt and fear and unbelief and uncertainty. But I can make you one promise. Like the writer says, my words will never return to me void. It will achieve that to which I send it. You are a creative being. Your thoughts are creating your reality. Your spoken words are creating your reality. So let me go back to the theme of what I started with. My question at the start was this: have you found your acres of diamonds within? That which you seek doesn't exist without. It exists within. So now you understand how to use your mind and you know how to use your speech. By combining both, you can create the future you want. I call all of that simply a process of setting goals. Everyone has heard about how to set goals. But there's a missing part of the whole equation that most people haven't quite adapted to. You sit down and you decide what you want, you create a picture of what you want, you put it in your mind, you believe it, you start acting like the person you want to be, but there is something that I should say that is missing. In your subconscious mind, we have what's called your self-image. In that part of your subconscious mind, you have habits that you've lived by for a number of years. Those habits come in various forms. Sometimes some people call those paradigms, a combination and a host of various habits. I woke up this morning and I brushed my teeth. I didn't think about it. Whilst I was brushing, I didn't think about it. And the reason is simple. I have a conditioned habit of brushing my teeth every day. Now, if you go back so many years when I was being taught how to brush, my mom had to wake up every morning and instruct me on what to do. Show me how, and in many cases stand by me until I had finished it and I'd done it well. At that time, it wasn't a habit. Today, it's a conditioned habit. So most of us, we live our life because we're conditioned. Now, I know that word conditioning doesn't sound great, but it's the reality of things. A lot of what we do habitually. And the difference between the poor person and the wealthy person, the happy and the unhappy, the successful and the unsuccessful, the fulfilled and the sad, comes down to one word: habits. Because what you do daily and consistently determines who you become permanently. If you want to understand your future, if you want to see your future, just sit down and analyze your habits. How do you spend your time? How do you spend your money? What do you do with your thinking, and how do you spend your thoughts? Your habits create your life. And so one of the things we must do after we've decided what we want and we've set the goal, we have to go back into our subconscious mind and we have to change our self-image. We have to change our habits. You can spend as much time as you want setting goals, but you must recognize that all you've done when you set a goal is you identify what we call your have goals. This is what I want to have. Or you may have spent some time doing what we call your to-do goals. This is what I want to do. I like to travel internationally. It's what you want to do. I like to have a new car. It's what you want to have. But in the sequence of how things are achieved, your have goals and your do goals are preceded by your be goals. You have to become someone to be worthy of attracting that which you want. It's a principle called the be do have. Some people call it the be do get. To have something, you've got to do something. But to do something, you must be the kind of person capable of doing that, meaning that you have to grow. And as much as you want to grow externally, you first have to grow internally. So we come into your subconscious mind and we have to look at your self-image. Because your self-image is what limits you and is what defines you. I'll say that again. Your self-image limits you and defines you. To have anything in life, the three things you have to do. You have to have the courage to ask for what you want. And you ask that in thoughts. Number two, you must have the faith and the belief and the expectation to recognize that it could happen. Number three, you must have the consciousness to receive that which you want. You cannot receive that which you do not have the consciousness to receive. Now, how do you get your consciousness to get to the level whereby you can receive? You have to raise your self-image. Now, think about this. In every area of your life, health, relationships, and let's say intimacy, education, if you're still studying, business, and what you earn. Let's also look at an area that we might say your social contribution. In every area of your life, every category of your life, you have a picture of who you think you are. You have a picture of who you think you are. In the 1960s, a really remarkable doctor called Maxwell Maltz found something that has changed how we live. He was a plastic surgeon, and he found that in many cases, whenever he had a surgery, that he had patients that came in for surgical operation, maybe because they had a scar, maybe because they had a part of their body they wanted changed. But he found that when they stood in front of a mirror, that what they saw in some areas, they wanted changing. So he spent a lot of his time becoming really specialized in producing one of the best levels of surgical operations. But he realized that for some of them, that after the operation, they became larger than life. They became awakened because the picture they could see, the reflection they could see in the mirror had changed. They had achieved what they wanted to achieve. For a few, he found they still were very unhappy. Although the scars were gone, although they had the perfect face, they had the perfect body, everything looked great. Although Dr. Maxwell Maltz thought he had done a great job, he found that a few were still very unhappy. Then he discovered a concept. He said, each and every one of us has a self-image, but we have more than one self-image. We have an external image, which is really the reflection we see when you stand in a mirror. As I stand before you now, you can see an image. You have an image of me. But if I stood in front of a mirror myself, I would see a reflection, which is an image of me. But Dr. Maxwell Maltz realized that we also have what's called an internal image. And that internal image was more influential on who we become than what we see in front of a mirror. Think about this. I don't know if you've met people who have all of the physical attributes that you could want or wish for. Extremely beautiful. But they don't feel beautiful because they have an image internally that is limiting them and controlling them. You may have met people who are academically geniuses, IQ extraordinary, but they don't feel intelligent. They don't feel happy. They don't feel fulfilled. Although everyone else says you're great, you're a genius, they don't see themselves as worthy because they have a different picture. You have to change the image within and not the image without. If you stood in front of a mirror, just imagine this concept, for example. You stood in front of a mirror and you're trying to change the reflection on the mirror. It's almost impossible. To change the reflection in the mirror, you have to change the person standing in front of the mirror. So, to change yourself and change your results, you have to change your internal self-image. Now, all of us have a self-image. Every one of us has a self-image. However, for most of us, our self-image we've inherited. I think that's probably worth saying again, because I think I might lose some of you right here. All of us have a self-image. When you were born as a blank canvas, empty. However, you were born into a family, you were born into an environment, you were born into a level of influence. The people around you, the associations you had, started to form and shape your beliefs about you. They had opinions about you. And in many cases, whether that's a father or mother or a guardian or whoever that might be, people can only give you what they have. So, people and those that loved you gave you what they could give you. They had opinions on who you were. At a young age, you couldn't use your reasoning faculty that I talked about earlier on, so you couldn't think inductively or deductively. You couldn't decide which was right for you and which was wrong. So you accepted who they thought you are. And they painted this portrait on your canvas. Now, when you got to an age where you could think for yourself, you had already been conditioned. Now, I talked about brushing my teeth earlier on. My mum had to instruct me on how to do it at a young age, up to a certain point where I could do it myself. I don't even think about it. So, your conditioning and your self-image was so firmly fixed that when you got to the age of reasoning and you could now think inductively and deductively, you already had an image of yourself. And you accepted that image. Why? Because obviously the people around you were people you loved and you trusted them. So some people who I've met who perhaps are 14 and 15 will say things such as, I'm not good with maths, I don't understand science, my father says I'm not great with maths. That's an image. Some other people might say, I'm not going to amount to anything. We were raised poor and this is all we can do. That's an image. There are some people who live in welfare homes and who generationally have all lived in welfare homes. That's an image they have about who they are. You and I have a responsibility. If you're going to change your life and create a really amazing life, you have to come back and sit down and ask yourself a simple question. Do my beliefs and my self-image, is that giving me the life that I want? Is that who I want to be? Now, I had to ask myself this same question. I got to a point in my life where the results I was achieving wasn't consistent with the image I had created in my imagination. There was a big difference. I wanted more from life, but I was not achieving more from life. Although I had the desire to achieve more, I found that I wasn't achieving it. And the reason was simply because I had this picture of who I was, and that picture was limiting what I could do. So I sat down and I asked myself, am I happy with the results? So if you're not happy with what you're creating, it's simply evidence to the fact that you need a change of philosophy, you need a change of belief, and you need a change of self-image. You've got to make room for new now. Make new for new empowering images and more empowering beliefs that can help you achieve your dreams and goals. Now, how do you do this? How do you go about changing your self-image? Very simple. Very simple. In the same way that you learn how to brush your teeth, you have to learn a new habit. The first thing you must do is, just in the same way you've created a goal, a picture of who you want to be, you've got to take a step back and now recreate a picture, a self-image of who you want to be. I know how difficult that is, but you don't have to do it alone. Imagine you being given a blank canvas with all the colors that Michelangelo used and Picasso used and Rembrandt used, you don't have to try to paint this picture alone. You can invite other people who have achieved a level of success and greatness that you admire to help you paint your picture. What does that mean? Obviously, you're not going to get Michelangelo back. You're not going to get Picasso back. No, but what you can do is you can look into the lives of people who have lived a life that you admire, people with integrity and good character, and people who have made a contribution to life, people who have found happiness and joy and prosperity and love. And you can simply take parts of the various people you studied and say, it's like a buffet. You can choose what you want. It's a life is a menu. You choose what you want. You can have anything you want. So you can choose qualities in people who have lived the life that you aspire to live. And with those colors, you can start to repaint your self-image. So the first thing to do is sit down and write a script of who you want to be remembered for. I often ask the question, forget about success for a minute. Just forget about success for 1 second. Forget about yourself and ask a different question. 100 years from today, how will I want to be remembered? I know it's a very difficult question, but it's a very powerful question. And the reason is simply because, you see, when you ask that question, you're thinking about legacy now. And legacy helps you understand purpose. Your legacy is how you're remembered. Your purpose is what you do. So by starting and beginning with the end in mind and asking yourself, how would I want to be remembered? What you find is by working backwards, it gives you a blueprint of how you should live. And that is where joy and happiness and fulfillment comes. Because now you're not thinking about yourself alone. You're thinking about how your life can make a difference. Now you're pursuing significance instead of success alone. So by asking yourself, how would I want to be remembered? That helps you create a blueprint script of that image you want to be. So the first thing you must do is write it down. Write the script of who you want to be. Now, once you've written that down, it's a goal. Now, you cannot just have a hazy goal and a goal that is not defined in terms of time. So you have to say to yourself, when do I want to become this person? So give yourself a deadline. Write it down. And next, what we have to do is recondition your subconscious mind, and we want to take the picture you have, because what you've done right now is you have a self-image that you've always had. You've now created a new self-image that you want. But you cannot get rid of an old habit or an old image by trying to fix it. The way you get rid of an old culture, an old habit, an old paradigm is you must create a new habit that displaces the old habit. It renders the old habit obsolete. That requires effort and work. And you do that simply through what we call the process of repetition. So every day now you have to start replaying and seeing yourself in your mind's eye as the person you want to become. And the more you impress this new picture in your mind, the more the old picture moves away. Now, how do you do this? Because it sounds a little bit too philosophical and a little bit too scientific, and you want it practical. It's very easy to do. I'm going to give you 5 or 6 steps of how you change and recondition your self-image. The first thing you do is you must see yourself as the person you want to be. So, number 1, imagine yourself walking into a movie screen. You've been to a movie, I will assume. You walk into a movie screen, what do you have? You have seats and you have a big screen. So the first principle we apply is what we call mental movies. You have to create mental movies. So imagine yourself walking into a room. Now this room could be in your home, or you could also imagine this being outside your home. I like to do this using my home. So imagine myself walking into a room in my home, and it's dark, and there's a screen, and there's one seat, and that seat is for me. I walk up and I sit on this seat, and the screen comes on. Now the picture and the motion picture on the screen is me, but it's me in the future, based on the image that I created and based on the life I want to live. So now what I'm doing is I'm watching a mental movie of myself in the future. What does this do for you? It helps you see. So remember what I said at the beginning, feeling completes the blessing. Your feeling is the secret. You want to live in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So this new self-image you've created, you want to feel that experience. You want to feel that life. But what is feeling? Feeling is simply your way and my way of using our sensory faculties. So by watching this mental movie, what you're doing is you're applying the sensory faculty of sight. Now you can say, I can see it. Now think about this. If you were to shut your eyes now, I'm not asking that you do, but you can do this later on. If you were to shut your eyes, for example, and you were to allow yourself perhaps to bring into your mind's eye a picture of perhaps the last holiday you had, where you were happy and there was love. And I said to you, can you imagine in your mind, see yourself back in the same place, perhaps walking on the sand, perhaps sitting in a nice restaurant, perhaps holding a loved one. If you were to close your eyes and allow yourself to see through your mind's eye exactly that experience, that automatically would change how you feel in the present. It would change your feelings. So sight and what you see is one way of changing how you feel. In the same way, this mental movies, what we do is we walk into a room, we imagine the room to be dark, we imagine a screen, and we can see a motion picture of the life you want to live. We see yourself interacting with people. Perhaps it's a new car you want. You see yourself driving the car. You see people talking to you about your new car. Maybe you feel it's a new home you want. You see yourself in the kitchen, walking around in your new home. You see yourself perhaps in your living room. Who knows, maybe you want a better relationship. You see yourself happy. All you're doing here is sitting down and seeing the future you want using your sight, in your mind's eye. That's number one. We call that mental movies. You have to create a mental motion picture of who you want to be and keep replaying that picture every day. I tend to recommend you do this twice a day. First thing in the morning and then in the evening. Now the second step you take is what we call mental rehearsal. In other words, you've seen, now you have to do. So in the second mental application you're going to do is imagine yourself now living that life. You want to be a professional football player, okay? Can you imagine in your mind playing football professionally? Can you feel you're sweating, you're training? Can you feel the difficult, perhaps going to a training camp in preparation for a very important tournament? You have to imagine yourself preparing, living that life, doing what you would do if you had that life. Now with the first, all you were doing was observing. You're standing back and you're observing. The second now, what we're doing is we're now living in the feeling. We're now the ones acting. Like a movie script, you've written the script, but you must stand back and play different roles. Number one, you're the script writer. Number two, you're the actor. Number three, you're the producer. You stand back and you observe. And then you can nod and say, this is a good film. So, you see, a lot of us are extras in our movies. we're not really playing the parts we want to play. Now, with these 2 steps, you're getting to change the script. You choose what you want the script to be. You become the producer. You become the actor. Now, the 3rd step you must take. You've written your goals down. You have a script. You've done the mental steps in your mind. You must move a little bit further now. I call it the process of using self-talk and affirmations. Affirm yourself. So make a list of affirmations. You might say, for example, I'm happily married to a loving, caring, faithful, purposeful, driven man, woman. You might say, I'm a mother of a child who is loving and caring, and who... You come up with whatever you want, but let your affirmations and your self-talk be confirmations of what you want. Few sentences, 10, 15, and every day, read those affirmations to yourself. Now, what is self-talk? Self-talk is saying to yourself what you would want and wish that other people would say to you. So, the great writer says, go into your closet and shut the door. Meaning, go into your imagination and shut the door on your senses, because your senses will tell you that you don't have what you want. So, on a day-by-day basis, you're going to have doubt come into your world. Self-talk and positive self-talk and affirmations is how you use faith to displace doubt. I'll say that again. Your mind is a garden. This is your world. As the gardener, you have a choice. You can allow weeds to grow. And guess what? If you have any experience in gardening, then you very quickly would agree with me that when you plant a seed and you start to grow flowers, you don't have to plant weeds. They grow automatically. You, on the other hand, you have to weed out all of the weeds. You have to protect. So, by self-talk and affirmations, you're standing guard at the door, at the gate to your mind. You're protecting your garden. And self-talk and affirmation is you planting seeds of faith to displace all of the doubts, so that what you see in your imagination is all you think about. Now, once you've gone through that process, you're now ready. Because at the end of the day, thinking is great, feeling is great, action is important. By thought, what we want is created. By feeling and expectations, they're sent to us. But by action, we receive it. So, action supersedes everything. You can think, you can feel, you can expect, but now you have to act. So, go back to the script you've written about the new you. You have to now take that vision, which is what a script is, convert that vision into a goal, which you already have, convert the goal into a strategy which you need to prepare. The strategy has to be based on a plan, and the strategy has to now be converted to daily habits. Because life is lived in a day. The future you want is not somewhere out there in the ether. It's not somewhere out there in the future. It's now. The past is gone. The future is yet to come. All you and I have is right now. So we have to learn to live in the nowness of time. We live in now. Right now is the future that you talked about 2 months ago. Think about that. 2 months ago, you talked about the future. We're in there now. So you have to learn to live in now. Now, how do you achieve and take that vision you've created and bring it into now? Habits. Daily habits. You must then have a habit that you create. The habit must be based on a routine. In other words, think about what I've given you so far. All I'm giving you are activities. that you have to take. You have to now fashion and mold those activities in a routine so that they occur consistently. If my mother only taught me to brush my teeth once every week, I probably would never have known how to do it automatically. To form a habit, you have to apply the principle of consistency. Because you see, by commitment, you begin the journey. By consistency, you achieve the promise. So it's consistency. So the routine you create allows you to form and mold that new image that you want in such a way that it's almost impossible to break once it's been formed. A lot of people say that it takes 21 days to create a new habit. I have a different view. My experience has shown that if it's something you're learning for the first time, you're going to have to do that for 100 days, consistently, without fail. Now, that is not a mistake. I said 100 days. It doesn't sound sexy, but I found that's what works. Most people do not achieve their New Year's resolutions or their goals because, you see, after the first 30 days, in many cases, and this is the reason, in many cases, all you're doing is sowing the seed. So for so many people, after 30 days, they don't see the harvest. And we do something. We simply say the grass is greener on the other side. So we stop what we're doing, we move somewhere else, and we start again. We wait, we don't see anything after 30 days, and we try again. So we're constantly digging up the seed and taking it to another soil. You have to learn how to let go and let God. I said earlier on, there is a season to sow, there is a season to reap. You cannot do both at the same time. You cannot do both in the same season. So you must learn to let go. Now, action is required because right now you've created a picture of who you want to become, but every day you have to start behaving, acting, living like that person. Mary Kay Ash talks about an experience she had so many years ago, when she was still alive, obviously. Walking down a corridor, she bumps into a lady. And she says, "Hello, how are you?" And the lady says, "I have all of these problems." The lady goes into a long list of all of the problems that she's experiencing. And Mary Kay Ash smiles at the lady and says, "My love, you have to fake it until you make it." Now that is, in my opinion, an esoteric statement. Most people will not understand what that means. She was not asking the woman to be fake. She was simply saying, you've got to have that picture of who you want to be. And you've got to be living in that picture. Though your reality seems different, you've got to be acting like the person you want to be. So what do movie actors do for us? They take a script and they perform the script to the point whereby you and I in a movie are in tears, but they are acting. I remember Danny Day-Lewis, who is now retired. His wife said something that I thought was remarkable. She said that every time Danny Day-Lewis performed a film, that it took her approximately, in some cases, 3 months to get her original husband back. The reason was simple. He wasn't acting the script. He was living the script. So Danny Day-Lewis is recognized as one of the greatest actors who ever lived. Why? Because every film and every role he played, he wasn't acting because he wanted to get paid. He was living. That is what Mary Kay Ash meant when she said, you got to fake it till you make it. In other words, live in the image until your reality changes to accommodate that which you once imagined. So, in taking action every day, what we want to do is identify the daily activities that you have to do to achieve that goal. You just break it down from the vision to the goal, to the plan, to the strategy, to the habits. Now, once you have those, you have to take action every day, consistently for 100 days without fail. Now, the action you're taking comes in a number of parts. In relation to your routine, you've got to set up time every day when you go through this process. Affirmations and self-talk need to be scheduled every day. Your mental movies and your mental rehearsal need to be scheduled every day. I tend to follow a sequence. I normally say, do your mental movies for 5 minutes in the morning, as soon as you wake up. Do your mental rehearsal for 5 minutes. Spend 5 minutes doing your affirmations and self-talk. Spend 5 minutes in gratitude for what you know that you've already received in your imagination and await in reality. It takes about 20 minutes. First thing in the morning, it's done. In the evening before you go to sleep, do the same thing. Now, the reason you repeat this in the evening is for a simple reason. When you go through the day, you're going to experience a lot of emotional challenges and setbacks, and things will come at you in such a way that you will doubt that which you affirmed in the morning. So, before you go to sleep, what you want to do is revise, recorrect your day by reaffirming and by using words of encouragement and inspiration and motivation to correct what may have come in as doubt. So you want to flush away the doubt. First thing in the morning before you go to bed. That's a routine. That has to be done every day. In between the day, you now have to be acting like that person you want to be. Meaning you have to take action. Start behaving like the person you want to be. Let's make this practical. Let's say you're in a job and you have a salary and a responsibility of someone in position 1. But you want to have position 2. So your self-image has to change from position 1 to position 2. Now, what are the responsibilities of someone in position 2? You can get that from your line manager. The key then is to ask yourself, if I am in position 2, how would I act every day? So when you go to work, you complete your responsibilities as required for position 1, but also you do things over and above that which you would normally do, so that you're acting at the level of position 2. It's really that simple. You're acting like the person in position 2. Now, at the end of the day, you have taken so much action. Perfect. However, you must sit down at the end of the day and ask yourself 2 questions. What did I do right? Was I consistent? Was I loyal to my vision? Number 2, what could I have done differently? In other words, what are the feedback? What needs changing? Because when you start this journey, sometimes it will work, sometimes it will not work. It's a step-by-step process. You take a step and you course correct. You take another step. But at the end of the day, you have to sit down and identify what you could have done differently, so that the next day you can right your wrong, you can course correct. This means that in addition to taking action, one of the most important things you need is what we call corrective action. You have to change some of the things that you should not have done. Now, that is a step-by-step process of how you change your self-image. If you do this consistently for 100 days, in every area of your life, relationship-wise, see yourself as a loving person, someone who has a lot to give, someone who has the abundance of love. See yourself happy, see yourself fulfilled. You can change your self-image. Within the working environment, see yourself earning what you really want to earn. You know, some people don't realize that it's not the company that limits their salary. It's the individual. You don't have the image of someone earning your desired salary. You want it, but you don't see yourself that way. Most people have an image of what they think they can achieve, and that image is limiting them. So in all areas of your life, you can apply this principle. Now let me bring this into a close. We've talked about your dreams and goals and setting your goals. We'll spend the last few minutes talking about your self-image. And the reason is because we've been trying to bring your self-image up to the level of what you want your goals to be. Because if you dream at this level and your self-image is at this level, although it's possible to have some temporary success at this level, it will not last. You must bring this self-image to the level that you want to succeed at. And then your goals, your dreams, your vision, and your self-image are one. There's integrity. Without integrity, which is wholeness, without integrity between your self-image and your dreams, there cannot be consistent success. To change your life, recognize that your acres of diamonds are all within. You have to start with self, and by changing yourself, you change your results. Now let me give you a chronology of events as I close. You have thoughts, but your thoughts are formed based on what you see, what you hear, and the influence around you. Now what you see, I suggest you use your imagination, not what you see in reality. In reality, you don't have enough food to feed 3 times a day. In your imagination, you have so much, you're helping other families, you're making regular contributions. So by thoughts, you begin the journey. So the first thing you have to do is choose what you see. Now choose what you hear. The environment, the news, the media, all the sensational information might say it's all doom and gloom. On the other hand, your self-talk and your affirmations are saying you've never been this wealthy before, that this is the highest you've ever achieved, and you're even getting wealthier. Your self-talk is saying you're happy, you're in a loving relationship, you have good kids, you have good health, you look beautiful. That's your self-talk, that's what you're hearing. Your associations, which will now be carefully selected, are people who believe in you, people who support your dreams and goals. Now, those 3 will decide how you think. How you think then chooses your focus. And wherever your focus goes, your energy moves in that direction. So your thoughts will control your feelings. Your feelings then must be expressed. And your feelings are only expressed through the only means possible, and that is through your body, by what you do, by action. By taking action, you then consistently, if done for 100 days, you form what we call habits. Those habits will then decide your character, your attitude, your behavior. Those 3 decide your results in life. Your results over a lifetime determines your destiny and your legacy. So, if you want to change your legacy, if you want to change your destiny, if you want to change your results, it all comes down to how you think. It's very simple. Now, I hope that's been useful. That's all I'm going to talk about today. But remember this, that everything you need is within you. You have to go in and seek the kingdom within you. And when you find that kingdom within you, you'll find that everything else you want is added onto you externally. But it all begins within, in you. Now, I hope that's been useful. Allow me to wish you the best of luck. God bless.